Hey guys, this video got really long, so I'm going to do a little TLDR at the beginning. If you're wondering about Anachronox and Wasteland and what's going on, Wasteland and Anachronox are both going to share the 11 a.m. time slot, and they're going to alternate on alternating days. And so Anachronox is not on hiatus, but it's not going up today. It will be up tomorrow, and then Wasteland will come up the next day, and then Anachronox is the next day, and so on. So they'll be on alternating days at 11 a.m. That's the TLDR. If you want the big explanation behind the motivation and the thought process and all this kind of breakdown stuff about the schedule and also how playthroughs work and all this other shit that's going on, then keep watching. But if you just wanted the basic structural information, I front-loaded it here just for you because this video got very long, but I like to be understood, I guess, so I explain everything. Hey guys, sorry if I'm a little incoherent or laggy today, but I'm a little foggy and tired and haven't had breakfast yet, and I'm still kind of waking up. But I want to get this video out in a timely fashion so people that are wondering what's going on can get their answers and just context and whatnot. Just people that kind of generally understand what the schedule is and are surprised when the schedule does not do what the schedule's supposed to do and all that. So you might be wondering, like, where's Anachronox today? What's up with Anachronox? Where'd it go? And it's, yeah, at the moment here, there's a Wasteland 3 video in the morning, but what's up? Like, it's a co-op video. Aren't group videos supposed to happen in the multiplayer slot and so on and so forth and things like that? Yes, to all these things to some extent. So for some context here, we've been doing Anachronox, and I'm not canceling it. It is still continuing. It's not even going on hiatus. Don't worry. It's not going anywhere. It's just, well, it's kind of going somewhere, but not really. It'll be. You'll see some more Anachronox tomorrow, and then the Wasteland the next day, and then Anachronox the next day. Because what we're gonna do here is we're gonna try alternating a little bit here between two RPGs at the same time. Thank you, motorcycle. I love American motorcycles. They definitely don't annoy me every day. God, I got woken up. That's part of the reason I'm tired. I got woken up by something like just some loud vehicle, and I'm just like, God damn it. Thank you for this. But anyway, a little context here is that I have this setup where I start a game, and then I finish that game, and then I choose a new game, and that is the entire process sequentially, basically, for all of the main time slots, which is that, like, 11 a.m. is the RPG time slot, 1 p.m. is the Patreon time slot, and 2 p.m. is this confusing time slot where that has a rotating genre, but is all one time slot where I rotate between, like, AAA and indie and puzzle and classic, and just sort of inject that variety and hit all the notes I'm trying to hit with fair regularity and all that. So you might be wondering, but like normally I start a game and then I finish it in one go, and there's episodes every day until the finale, and then I pick the new game. And in some ways it's kind of liberating because, like, there's always this pressure to start games the moment they come out, but I'm like, nope, that game's just gonna sit there on the horizon. Every single game that comes out is irrelevant to me, and I don't give a shit about it until a game finishes and it's time to pick a new game, in which case suddenly I'm then looking at my spreadsheets and figuring out what the next target is. Like, which of these 14 games that have come out since the last game do I play and whatnot. But anyway, there are exceptions to this, somewhat. They don't come up much, and if I'm really, really careful, I can even carefully craft my schedule to make the exception not apply and just have the thing I'm already doing finish in time for the new thing that is the big deal. But as you might imagine, the biggest exception on the entire thing would be whenever From Software makes a game, basically. Like, if a new Dark Souls comes out, or a new Sekiro, or the upcoming Elden Ring and whatnot, like, no matter what my schedule currently looks like, I am going to play that game on launch day, and I'm going to start making videos on it immediately, and I'll just have to make the schedule fit. There's been a few versions of this in the past, like when I just put a game on hiatus for a few weeks or something, for example. which I'm pretty consistent at coming back to ever since I've been doing this full time. I don't normally have to cancel anything unless it's a really weird thing. But if I cancel a game, it's usually because of the game itself and not because of outstanding reasons outside of the game. Like the big exceptions, definitely whenever a Souls game comes out, which is those are separated by years, but whenever it comes out, it's like we're fucking playing this. It's like the identity of this channel is built around that exact thing. That it's like I'm going to it, and it's also just what I want to, and I'll just be thinking about it all the time how I would just want to play that thing, and I got to get to it. This kind of happened with The Last of Us, where I was like, I want to play The Last of Us, and I want to do it as fast as possible and just get it going. And so it led to me putting Kentucky Route Zero on hiatus. But I hadn't aired any episodes of that yet. I just had pre-recorded them, so you guys didn't really notice that it was on hiatus, but it was from my perspective. So it happened there a little bit. Another potential thing is Halloween. Like, if I want to do a Halloween horror game event where I'm playing horror games in a bunch of the time slots or whatever during Halloween, then sometimes a game that's just sticking around for way too long might really make me miss my window for being able to play anything for Halloween in the Halloween window. Like, say, my annual playthrough of a Silent Hill game that I've been doing for 3 years now, and I'm sure I'll do it this year too. Like, I might have to put a game on hiatus in order to, and break the normal schedule system just to make it happen in its thematically appropriate time. As far as what's going on here, let's go to my channel and we'll sort by most popular. And that pretty much clarifies, doesn't it? In fact, this will clarify a couple of things. My most popular video on my entire channel is Wasteland 2, which might even come as a surprise to some people. It still comes as a surprise to me, but generally speaking, if I'm going to please the algorithm, I should probably play Wasteland 3 immediately when it comes out. And also, like, potentially a decent number of you guys are here from Wasteland 2. I'm not sure the data supports that. I think a decent number of people say that they're here from Return of the Obra Dinn and The Witness, and a decent number of World of Warcraft people, actually. Then a lot of people from Abduction and Myst and whatnot, and like some Monster Hunter people, and like it's a kind of all around the thing. And then of course like a ton of Dark Souls people, obviously, as previously stated. And so the Dark Souls is always going to be a major thing here. But like a decent number of people always cite like certain puzzle games as why they came here, which is like a common question on the Discord when people join. It's like, yo, what game brought you to Keith's channel? And because that's just like a tradition some of the users have introduced, is asking that question. And so I see answers periodically, and it's often that kind of stuff. So generally speaking, I haven't really heard people say Wasteland 2, but there's a decent chance that a lot of you came here from Wasteland 2 just because it's so astronomically popular. Like, by the time you get to my third video, or even my second video, but especially like my fourth video and whatnot, Wasteland 2 has double the views of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. A game that I often cite as being the game that launched my channel to its first spurt of like actual proper momentum, and that I've been riding all the way till now, basically, for last 5 years. Like, it didn't single-handedly make my channel. Like, it was a combination of like Dark Souls 2 and like Obra Dinn and The Witness and Abduction and like Talos Principle somewhere down there and whatnot, and like certain games all led to moments, and Wasteland 2 was also kind of one of those moments. But yeah, like it quickly drops off. Like, this is by far and above the most popular video on the entire channel. So, you know, I feel that pressure where I'm just like, yeah, I think I should really just get on this. I should really just get on Wasteland 3 the moment it's out, and Wasteland 3 is out now at long last. A sequel has happened. You also might notice here that some of my co-op playthroughs here are some of my most popular videos too, and so that somewhat informs my other part of this video that's somewhat controversial potentially, is that I'm doing a co-op playthrough of Wasteland 3, and it's just like the signs kind of point there overall, because generally speaking, and this especially speaks to CRPGs. I think the CRPG genre, while I do enjoy it, and I haven't even played that many of them yet, it is kind of stagnant. Like, you can play a CRPG from a decent long time ago and a brand new one, And in many, many ways, they're surprisingly similar. Like, there just hasn't been a lot of evolution and change, in part because I think the recent resurgence of the popularity of CRPGs, be they Wasteland and Shadowrun and Pillars of Eternity, are often nostalgic Kickstarter projects where the core idea of it is to make a Kickstarter project about an underrepresented older genre and then promise to bring it back to its glory days. So, like, to some extent, the legacy of like current CRPGs are somewhat hamstrung and like collared by their legacy as a older genre with particular appeals. So hitting all those nostalgic notes is part of how these developers make their money and so on. But it does lead to a thing where I'm just like, I'm looking at these things and I'm just like, I'm looking for changes, I'm looking for iteration, I'm looking for innovation and creative things and whatnot. And so when somebody does something weird like Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 are co-op games and single, like you can play them single player obviously, but like the first game had 2 main characters that were equally valid main characters, and the second game had 4 main characters that were all equally valid main characters. That were all playing together as a team. All of them could split off at any moment to do stuff independently of the main party. And over the course of the game, when the chosen one narrative is essentially rearing its head, there's the question of which one of you is that person, and it's straight up, and it does execute on that idea in a pretty cool way. So I find that really cool when that kind of stuff comes up, and I'm like, all right, cool. I want to see where this is going and where the genre can take this new idea. So when Wasteland 3 promised co-op when it was first announced, like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, I was like, yeah, I'm probably playing it that way. Embarrassingly, I invented a completely different version of Wasteland 3 in my head that never existed, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Although I think I have notes on this. Let's see. I typed up a community post about this recently that I thought I was going to post, and then I never posted it. Partly because it's kind of embarrassing because it's a bunch of dumb stuff. It's like me getting in my own head and whatnot. But if you want to screenshot and read this dumb thing, it's right. I think it's all in frame right now. This is my big post that I almost made. It's a few different. I just kept going. I was just writing. I was probably just exploring the idea, but it ultimately felt unnecessary to post. But I thought that a different version of Wasteland was going to happen, essentially, which is that I thought that, and I guess this is probably informed by Wasteland 2. In Wasteland 2, the first thing that happens after the intro or whatever is that you choose to go to either High Pool or the Ag Center. And the one you don't go to, time progresses because you didn't go and help them when you were helping the other people. So you get a different version of the second mission. Whichever one you go to second is different from what it would have been like if you went there first. Like, whatever problem was happening there probably got worse. Some characters are probably dead. I think there might be a companion in each of those locations you only get if you go there first, but I don't really remember that clearly because I played the game 4 years ago. But based on this, I was thinking, oh, we probably can play as 2 separate roaming squads in Wasteland 3. So in my head, I thought Wasteland 3 was going to be a little different. I thought that I would group up with a second player, but we would play kind of asynchronously, and that I thought we would essentially be playing single-player RPGs in 2 different locations at the same time, like the equivalent of, like, what if I went to High Pool and they went to Ag Center, and then we didn't actually play together, but we were playing in the same world and making choices independently of each other without consenting with each other about what we want to do and consulting with that, which leads to surprises of, like, because then I imagine, like, oh, I would go to, like, if I went to Ag Center first, and then, like, say Andrew went to High Pool, and I dealt with Ag Center my way, and then I went to High Pool and he went to Ag Center, for example, after we'd both resolved those situations in that form. And then I just arrive at High Pool to see like the aftermath of what he has wrought upon that place, be it good or ill. And it's like a great situation or horrible situation or whatever. And then I'm like, what did he do? And like all the NPCs are talking about like what this other Ranger squad did here. They either like idolize them or they hate them or they're all dead or who knows what. So I'm a little sad to find that that's not what Wasteland 3 is. I can't necessarily blame them because I maybe made this up entirely, but that's definitely the impression I had got of what Wasteland 3 would be when I saw like the preview materials like 3 or 4 years ago, and then it just lived in my head. Because I don't look too closely at this stuff, and I don't like research stuff over and over again because I'm trying not to actively spoil games because I do blind playthroughs, so I don't watch that many trailers and gameplay previews and whatnot because that can negatively impact what I do. But that's my general approach. That said, I think I did some digging here about the idea. Because yeah, there was this previous quote I found in an old article that says, for example, you may deal with a criminal gang of smugglers, turning a blind eye and helping keep their trade routes clear from danger for a cut of their profits. In single player, this would mean that you'd receive a payment from time to time at your ranger base for keeping the deal going. In multiplayer, because both you and your friend are playing independently, it'd be possible for one player to make the deal with the smugglers and not tell the other player, and thus that player would receive compensation in return. Meanwhile, the second player might independently choose to attack the smugglers for the good of the people of Colorado, not knowing the prior deal, and that would lead to a similar consequence where the smugglers end up at Ranger HQ asking hard questions. See, like, for me, this really offers a lot of... This does sound like a big macro scale thing, like it's a big, crazy thing. How the situation is ultimately resolved would have consequences for both players. Even if only one of them is involved in handling it, players will sometimes be required to be together for key narrative moments and missions, which Keenan says would happen infrequently and only at core moments in the game. And if either of you can't, or maybe doesn't want to continue playing for some reason, then you could just make it a single player playthrough at that point. So like this, I think my original read wasn't completely wrong with the fact that like that really does feel like the game they're describing is what I was just talking about, where you split up, play completely separate experiences, and you only meet up for big climactic moments where you need to band together to deal with a big threat or make a big major choice. But it's really sounded like you could play 2 independent campaigns and have them impact each other's playthroughs, and that would be really interesting, and I was really hyped about that game. But as this more recent interview is somewhat less encouraging and applies to more what the game seems to be. This one says, in single player you control a party of 6 rangers, in multiplayer you and your friends still manage a party of 6, but can divide it between the two of you as you like, so 3 and 3 and so on. As long as you're within the same level, you can separate and do different things. This seems worse, right? You're like, wait, you have to be in the same level. You can't just like go to 2 different locations completely and then deal with the consequences of each other's choices. In my head, I was imagining a kind of situation where each of us were essentially playing half the game, which admittedly would make my job easier because I would essentially be playing like half of the game, and so I would be done recording it like twice as fast essentially, and then I'd be showing the footage of the other person's perspective, and it'd be like Game of Thrones or something like that, or like many types of television where you have 2 main characters or more, and you cut between their perspectives. So like in my head, this is going to be like a playthrough where here's how I resolved this chapter, and then here's how he resolved that chapter. So you'd spend like an episode or even several episodes with a different Let's Player, and I just wouldn't be in the series for a few episodes while you saw their perspective, and then it would go back and forth, and it'd be this big, larger scale thing, which I find really interesting because if people can roleplay their characters separately, like that's interesting. The example I always go to is like Andrew and I played Beyond Two Souls together, where I played Ellen Page and he played the Ghost, and that made us actually act against each other's better interest, whereas one person playing both of them, they'd be a little defanged and declawed and not want to like fuck things up too bad because like, but I'm playing that character too, so why would I want to be bad to that character, and so on. But like, for example, me and Andrew played Outer Worlds in very different ways, and it'd be interesting if those characters could coexist in the same universe as each other and have to deal with the fallout of each other's choices and whatnot. And so that's kind of what I was looking forward to, is like each of us would take turns playing a level essentially, and then have to deal with the consequences of the other character's actions. And it would be supported in game as being like, yes, we are different characters. It's not just me playing like Pillars of Eternity and randomly giving the game to somebody else at random intervals or whatever. It'd be like that we're separate characters with separate motivations who actually behave separately, as opposed to the usual thing, which is where one person has to try to roleplay every character and try to make choices on behalf of all of them. Or in many cases, you just have one main character and everyone else just sits there and goes along with you because they're NPCs. But yeah, here's now it says as long as you're in the same level, you can separate into different things. So that changes my scope of the plan for the playthrough that I had in my head for a few years there. But we'll see how it goes. One person getting into a fight while the other person's shopping at a merchant. It's nice, convenient way to play. We put a lot of work into the basic concept of making it fun for two people to control these parties. We have turn-based combat, blah, blah. Let's see. When you save, it saves on both people's systems, and either of them can load it as a single-player campaign without the other person if they want to. Here's what stood out to me, is that it really helps create a lot of options for players. We knew going in that the actual use case for multiplayer is that this sort of game is not having two people. The use case for this kind of game is not having two people get together and sit end-to-end for an entire 80-hour playthrough. This is not the type of game experience that's conducted to that. We want to allow flexibility. So basically they're saying they want drop-in and drop-out. And I'm like, ooh, I don't like that. Because in my head, I was like, no, I want this game to commit to the idea that you will play this game with another person for the entire game. I mean, you could just choose to play a single-player game from the get-go, obviously. But if you're going to play co-op, it's like, no, this is a co-op experience. We are both characters. We inhabit those characters. We're going to make choices, and we're going to beat this game together. But now they're leaning towards this like drop-in, drop-out thing where like somebody else can hop in and control the other character for a while, and they can go play single player for like 10 hours, and then a completely different person could join in and play the other character for like the next 10 hours. And it's like, what an incoherent mess of a playthrough. I don't like that at all. So no, despite the fact that they seem to think that that's like, no one would ever do that, play the whole game with two people, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So that's me. I'm gonna be. This is my thing. Is I'm gonna try to do the ambitious thing here, and it might burn. It might blow up in my face. This playthrough might be. In fact, every co-op thing I ever do that could have been single player, there's always people complaining that I did it co-op instead of single player because they would have preferred a single player, or they just like fixate on individual people I'm playing with and complain about those people and like that person's ruining this playthrough and so on. And like that's the usual feedback that at least somebody will give, regardless of whether it's representative or not. But I'm gonna do it for two reasons. One, it's the thing that sounds most exciting to me. And so just me, like I want to run the experiment and see what the results are and how it turns out. And then at the end, you kind of come up with the conclusion of like, do I think that this was like, if this went poorly, do I think it went poorly because the co-op was a bad idea, or just that this particular game didn't really necessarily handle the co-op that well, perhaps, or did it fucking rock or whatever, and so on. The other reason to do this is just that on YouTube, you want to stand out to some extent. It's just a good thing to do, is to try to stand out in some way, and anything that can hone that down is helpful. Like one good good thing is like, yeah, be the guy who plays puzzle games and whatnot. Like that narrows you down a whole lot. So like when I played The Witness, and just almost nobody was willing to play through that game that had a large channel. At most places like Achievement Hunter did like a preview video that mostly frustrated their audience because they're like, it's just a bunch of people like shouting and fucking with each other and not really figuring out the game or giving it its due time, and then being mad at the game for it and so on when they're not really paying any attention, like that kind of stuff. And then they come to my channel and they're like, ah, yeah, this guy does the witness the way I want him to, or whatnot, like that kind of stuff. Like you being sometimes it's just like being one of the only people that covers a game is an advantage, and like stuff like Return of the Obra Dinn and the Witness are niche things that the really, really big channels often will skip over. And so it's for us and the dregs to all fight over the scraps. In Wasteland 2, in a funny situation, I got some decent viewership from Scholar of the First Sin and Wasteland 2 because they were both like 1 year later director's cuts versions of games, or 2 years later or whatever. In that all those big channels would have covered the first version of the game, Dark Souls 2 or Wasteland 2, but they're not going to usually return back and play the same game again for the new version, which like I agree with. Like there's diminishing returns to playing a game again, so it's kind of a bummer to go back and play the same game again when you've already basically played the same game, just minus those changes. So it is kind of best to just let somebody else cover it and leave it at that. But funnily enough, you can see on that second row there, State of Decay Year 1 Survival Edition. Like once I have in my top 2 rows here, you have 2 games where I played the director's cut or whatever version of it, and like in Dark Souls' case, I also played Dark Souls 2, but Scholar of the First Sin is up there because yeah, like I played that version too, and that it did way better than Dark Souls 2 did for my channel. Like that was a big leap at the time. So like anything that filters you out and makes your playthrough unique and special and unusual is somewhat helpful. Another example you see down there is like I played Firewatch on this channel, but my Firewatch playthrough is not in my top viewed videos screen. My Firewatch Silent Henry playthrough is on my top things, which is a gimmick playthrough where I played Firewatch again, but every single time I had the option to not say something, I didn't say anything. And so we saw how the game's dialogue plays out and how the story feels, and how like Delilah is characterized when Henry is just ignoring her as much as possible. And so like there's just, just anything that mixes things up. And so I think that with this whole thing, this context I just gave explains why one of my top videos ever is Divinity Original Sin 2 co-op, because it's the fucking batshit insane approach of we're going to play this entire CRPG from front to back in 4-player co-op, and that's like hard. It was hard at the time. There's a lot of reasons why that's hard to do. You're playing an entire CRPG in multiplayer the entire way through, wrangling those people and keeping them together and all getting through the experience together and all that. Like it's just challenging and a pain, and I can see, and that's why most channels wouldn't do it, and that's probably why it's one of my top videos. And so that's my motivation behind my additional motivation behind this choice. It's like I want to do a co-op playthrough of Wasteland 3 because just doing a single player Wasteland 3 playthrough makes me, like all the other playthroughs. In fact, many of you, based on your taste, will be already subscribed to another channel who's probably already covering Wasteland 3. And so I'm giving you something different potentially by doing a particular flavor of co-op playthrough, and then you can potentially watch like one single player playthrough and one co-op playthrough and get different experiences out of the game and see different parts of what the game can be when different choices are made and so on. Or just, end up deciding you like one or the other one better and just watch that one and not the other one. And so it goes. It's always a gamble. We've been through this a lot with like how when I chose Japanese dialogue in Ghost of Tsushima, or whenever I choose to play a game single player or multiplayer and so on. It's just that every time you do this, it is a mutually exclusive choice where whoever wanted the other one will be unhappy, and whoever wanted the one you did choose will be happy potentially. And you just have to make a call. You just like, do I play this game in Japanese or in English? Do I play this game single player or co-op? Do I play this game as a good guy or a bad guy? Do I kill NPCs or do I only do dialogue approaches to things and so on? Like there's just mutually exclusive versions, and you can only make one playthrough at a time, and that'll probably be the only playthrough you ever make, because either way, if you go back and do it again, that second playthrough won't be a blind playthrough. So it's more like a walkthrough-y, talky thing that's different. And there's the diminishing returns of playing a game again and so on. This is becoming a long thing. But anyway, I want to iterate because those are all my motivations for playing Wasteland 3 in a way that fucks with the campaign a bit. that fucks with like the Anachronox and Wasteland thing. Which, by the way, I probably should have said this sooner. As far as Anachronox goes, it'll be every other day, and Wasteland 3 will be every other day, and it'll just kind of hang out there. And if I fall behind, because Wasteland 3 requires coordinating with other people and so on, and editing and so on, and we'll get into that editing in a minute here, then that just means that Wasteland 3 will just vanish for a few days, and Anachronox will just go back to being a daily video series. Unless something goes wrong, there should be a video in the RPG slot every day, and it will be biased in favor of Anachronox until Anachronox is done. So it'll be split 50-50 where they alternate, or Anachronox will go back to being daily if like there's a blackout on Wasteland 3 recordings or something like that, or a technical problem or any other issue comes up as a result. So that's where Anachronox is. It's not going away. It's not even going on hiatus. It's just going to go to every other day. And at half an hour, like if you think about it, the point of Wasteland, of the RPG slot becoming an hour long, was to get through RPGs twice as fast, just as a general backlog thing. So putting these back to every other day essentially takes them back to being a half an hour per day on average, which basically makes these playthroughs just get covered at the same rate as most games normally do when you look at like the Patreon game or Kentucky Route Zero and so on. So it's not going to be exactly a small amount of content regardless. And that might function as an experiment. This kind of comes as an afterthought as a result of all this and is not a motivation behind this choice. But generally speaking, we can go back to, let's see. We can go back to the main tab again. Generally speaking, the RPG slot is often one of the lesser viewed things on the channel. Like Anachronox, the last episode's down to 230 at the moment from yesterday. Like Wasteland 3 is already on its way to overtaking it over the course of me recording this video. It's already about to catch up with how many views Anachronox got yesterday in total. And that's pretty normal a lot of the time. Oftentimes the RPG is the least viewed thing on the channel, and that might be because RPGs are niche and only a particular kind of audience wants to watch these like slow plodding, long-winded playthroughs and so on, which is fine. I will cover RPGs regardless because it's just my drive that's where it is. It's what I want to do and so on, even if it is like a passion project sort of aspect. But this could be an interesting experiment is like, I want the hour-long episodes because I want to get through the RPG backlog twice as fast. And me alternating might seem like a contradiction, but if you think about it, I'm still going through my backlog of RPGs at the same speed, which is the double speed, 1 hour per day thing. Because it's more of a macro thing. It's the fact that if I played half an hour episodes of like, for example, like when I went and played like Pillars of Eternity, that episode, like that one playthrough would have lasted, it lasted over 100 episodes when they were an hour long, which means it would have lasted over 200 episodes when they were half an hour long, which that one playthrough would have single-handedly absorbed 2/3 of a year as one game, let alone its sequel, which I think is longer. So people are like, when are you gonna play Pillars of Eternity 2? And like even smaller-ish ones like Yakuza 3, I think was 40-something episodes, which means in the old schedule, it would have, within half an hour episodes, it would have taken about 80 episodes, which means that Yakuza 3 would have taken about 3 months to beat as one game. So that's my motivation to do hour-long episodes in this slot, is just that my backlog of RPGs I want to get to is monstrous. There's The Witcher 1 and 2, Dragon Age 1 and 2, Deus Ex 1 and 2, Wasteland 1, Jade Empire, KOTOR 2, and The Old Republic. Planescape, Torment, and like many. I have like a list, and it'll always grow. The Temple of Elemental Evil, and stuff like that. And then upcoming games like Cyberpunk, whatever the number, 2033, I think, or whatever. I think, no, that's I think that's Metro. Cyberpunk, Vampire the Masquerade 2, stuff like that. Like there's always an endless list, and like every single one of those games could, in the old schedule, could take 3 to 6 months to beat, and in the new schedule, it could take like 1 to 3 months to beat. And so that's the idea, basically, is just to try to like, because the schedule is the backlog of RPGs is so monstrous and endless, and I don't want to, and I don't like the commitment of playing picking a game being like a fucking like most of a year commitment. That's terrifying to me. So getting through this games faster is obviously useful. Obviously, and then there's also Yakuza 4, Yakuza Dead Souls, Yakuza 5, Yakuza 6, and the upcoming Yakuza 7, which all need to be played in the correct order. Like that's big franchise playthroughs like that. Like it benefits to have this hour-long slot, and so that's the purpose. So while I am currently splitting the stream between Anachronox and Wasteland 3, on the macro scale, we're still making the same daily progress through my RPG backlog, so I'm not that bothered by the split there. But it'd be an interesting experience to see, like, hey, maybe maybe while the 1 hour playthrough episode duration, while it is often requested, and people are always like, make these videos longer about whatever playthrough they're particularly after at a time. And I finally did take that advice, but where I thought it was best applied, which is RPGs, the games that pacing-wise really do benefit from longer videos, whereas other ones are just people being impatient by comparison. Perhaps the commitment of an entire hour-long episode every day is a bit much, and maybe that hurts the views on those videos. So, interesting little experiment. What if alternating between 2 RPGs at the same time potentially leads to both games getting better viewership, because the people that are watching a particular playthrough are in many cases people watching one playthrough aren't watching the other playthroughs. So they're potentially 2 different audiences being served by the 2 different RPGs, especially if I pick different enough ones. And maybe they'll just be watching one playthrough every other day, and the slower pace will give them more time to keep up with that playthrough, and so they'll be less likely to fall off, and the numbers will be better for each of the playthroughs at the same time. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll learn from this, and the experiment will teach me that I should have a hybrid slot for the RPGs where we skip back and forth between 2 of them, and maybe that leads to a better user end experience for the people that are watching the RPGs, or maybe it doesn't. Either way, the experiment's not the goal, it's just a byproduct, and so we'll see if we learn anything from that. But that's the schedule. 11 a.m. we're gonna have every other day is Anachronox, and then every other day alternating with that is Wasteland 3 co-op. And if Wasteland 3 is missing for any reason, then we'll just have more Anachronox. And then the schedule will probably return back to normal to just being one game once Anachronox is done, which I'm sure we'll finish first. And then probably Cyberpunk comes out, and that'll become the sole focus of the RPG slot next. But maybe I'll look back at this experiment after Cyberpunk and be like, maybe I should be alternating between different playthroughs or something like that. So maybe we'll learn something from that part. Anyway, when I talk about big editing projects, this video is long, but it's dense and full of information. Like, I'm covering stuff here. I guess it's just a lot to talk about. I'm just so fucking verbose. It's like, it's a problem. Somebody stop me. Why do I do this to myself? I have shit to do today. I need to go eat breakfast. But I just want to get this out in a timely fashion, which I'm failing at right now, technically. And now it's long enough that people aren't going to watch it anyway. I'll make a TLDR post in the comments or something about exactly what's going on with Anachronox for people that don't want to watch the entire thing or something. Or I'll intro with that, I guess. Anyway, as far as editing goes, this is going to be fucking nuts, because I wanted to iterate on a frustration I had with these playthroughs of like Divinity and whatnot, which is that, like, in the pursuit of making a good experience for the audience, I wanted to keep everybody together. So the goal was that everybody would have conversations with NPCs together and do every fight together and travel as a pack, basically. But like, that kind of sucks, because like, while it does offer the potential for like banter between the players and like and choices made by different players, adding to like the multiplayer aspect, you're not really acting like you're separate people. You're all walking around as one flesh mob, and like as if you're all chained to each other. And so you're not really acting properly independently of each other, which really diminishes the proper co-op aspect of the game. But it was really unfeasible to do anything else. So the alternative was that we would split up, but then the playthrough would be completely incoherent because you'd only see my perspective, and people's on other channels would only see their perspectives, and you would just not know what the fuck's happening half the time because you couldn't see anything. And part of that was because the videos were all coming out like as fast as possible, and also it was 4 separate people that weren't necessarily even recording, and like being able to wrangle the footage from all 4 people would be hell, and trying to coordinate this thing so that'd be doable and coherent sounds incredibly hard. So we just stuck to what was the quote-unquote easy approach, which was to stick together and make it so that everyone's perspective was simultaneously always basically seeing everything. And so you pretty much could just upload the videos as is, and that would be a decent viewer experience for the audience, and so on. This time around, I want to iterate on that, and I want to step forward and do something crazy, which is that I want me and Andrew to actually split up. I want us to actually go to different places as this game promises in its like mission statement for its co-op. So apparently we have to stay in the same map, but I want us to explore that map separately from each other whenever possible, and like wander around and talk to different NPCs separately from each other and make choices independently of each other that the other one's not necessarily privy to. And so we're both going to be recording the entire playthrough, and he's going to send me his footage, and I'm going to edit that into, and I'm going to try to do a good job, but it's very time consuming, but I'm going to try to like edit the 2 separate playthroughs whenever we split up into like an episodic coherent thing where it's cutting back and forth between us. This is not the same thing as the multiple perspectives videos I've done on other games, like that escape room we did recently, or Dark Souls and stuff like that, where it's like a simultaneous achievement hunter style, we're all in this together, but you're just cutting between perspectives to show different perspectives. I mean, like, me and Andrew are going to go radio silent, and we're just going to be doing single player let's plays for you guys where we're not talking to each other because we're separated from each other. And so in those moments, that'll be a completely isolated thing. So you'll like hang out with me for like 20 minutes and then cut over to his playthrough and hang out with him for like 20 minutes and then back to me. And like maybe there's a reveal where like you walk in, like one of us walks in like the burning wreckage of an area, and we're like, what happened here? Then it'll be like 20 minutes ago, and it cuts to the other perspective of the other person dealing with that situation and then showing how that got that way and so on. Like, I'm going to try to experiment with editing this almost like a TV show a little bit, where it cuts back and forth, and you get the full perspective of both of us, which means that if we're fully separated for an entire hour of recording, that I have 2 hours of footage and you guys get 2 hours of footage, because it essentially would be like, well, we each recorded an episode's worth of content, and after you edit it up where I'm cutting back and forth between that's still 2 episodes of content, because there's no overlap. But then whenever we are together, then it just becomes a really simple, like, this is just our shared perspective, and there's no editing back and forth because we're just in the same place and so on. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a little hard, and I'll try not to fuck it up, and I really hope I don't accidentally leave major things on the editing room floor and accidentally cut them out when I'm cutting between the perspectives, because I'm going to try really hard to do this right, but also, you know, time constraints and trying to do a good job of the editing and whatnot. But it'll be an experiment. This will specifically be a type of playthrough that has basically never happened on this channel before, and that's kind of exciting to me. But let's not overhype it. It's still just a let's play and all that. But it's a little bit like when I did Man of Medan with Kernel RPG and did something really different and weird with it, which is that we both recorded our first person perspectives of the mode where you genuinely exist separately in the same world. And then in that one's case, instead, I could have edited them into split screen or did a bunch of other different things, but with that one, I ultimately went with like, okay, this is a simultaneous game, so I'm going to edit my videos, and Colonel's going to send me his videos. I'm going to edit his videos too, and make sure that both of our playthroughs, each episode is the same length across both of our channels. And if I do it that way, then people can sync up the two videos if they so choose. They can either watch my episode and see my perspective and then see Kernel RPG's perspective separately, or they can watch the entire playthrough with just one perspective and stop and just leave it at that. Or they can load up both perspectives simultaneously, and they can use one of those split screen programs to load both YouTube videos at the same time, and then they can cut and they can see what's happening from both of our perspectives at the same time. So like those are the different, like that was the particular approach I took that time. And this time I'm taking this approach where Andrew and I are going to record our playthroughs of Wasteland 3, and whenever we're together it'll just be a normal co-op playthrough, but whenever we split up, we're going to mute Discord and not be talking to each other, and we're both going to just be talking to you guys directly and doing a proper single player let's play basically for a while until either our paths cross or we need the other one's help or something. Then we'll be like calling each other on the radio essentially, as if as if that's how it works in game. We'll essentially be like doing comms towards each other, like Team Bravo, come in, or whatever the fuck. I need some backup here, and then we'll run over and do backup, and then it'll become like a co-op playthrough again and so on. But I specifically want to engage with this game the way that it's meant to be engaged with, which is the idea that you would split up and do different things from each other. The thing that kept me from doing that in the past is that it would be a horrible audio-visual experience. If Andrew and I were just both in comms on Discord and you could hear both of us at all times and we split up, it would be like a really brutal experience where like I would be talking to one character over here and their voice lines are playing and the dialogue voice acting is playing, and then across the map Andrew's like complaining about a fight he's currently in or something, and like he's talking over the dialogue that he doesn't even know is happening because I'm currently over here doing dialogue, and two people talking about two different things at the same time, trying to figure out like how much do I say to the audience, and how much am I filibustering the comms and whatnot. Like sharing a communication channel and trying to make a presentation presentable to the audience is part of the reason why we specifically don't split up in this kind of playthrough. And so my solution is for us to go radio silent. And you've kind of seen a light version of this if you've been watching the Final Fantasy 14 playthrough, which if I look at the numbers, you probably have been, I guess, because that's apparently a fucking that's like the most popular thing on this channel right now, which is weird because it's an MMO, and that's usually not the case. I'm surprised, but people seem to really latch onto the Final Fantasy 14 playthrough in a way that is almost bizarre to look at compared to every other playthrough on the channel right now. But you'll notice that whenever I go off and do either when the story forces us into single player mode, or when I go off to do my class quests, I have a hotkey set up that mutes Discord. Both it mutes my microphone so they don't hear me talking, and also mutes Discord itself so I don't hear them talking, and it just becomes single player for a bit. This is like a version of that, except if Effie and Andrew were also recording and they were also doing commentary of their own like class quests, and then I cut that into the video afterwards, which is just not what we're really equipped for in that playthrough, and not necessarily what we've been set up for. And at this point we're deep enough in that you've already missed the beginnings of their stories anyway, so ultimately that's just my perspective playthrough where I have the courtesy of muting them when I do my solo quests, that you don't hear them randomly talking about nonsense unrelated to what's going on the screen when I'm doing my solo class quests. But Wasteland 3, we're going to do the next form, which is that. It's going to be like a hybrid single-player co-op, like the proper co-op experience playthrough. And I've never done it before, and so maybe it'll be bad. Maybe it'll crash and burn. The risk here is that I'm doing a type of playthrough I've never done before, and we're also trying to do it in a blind playthrough. So it's also games I've never played before, so I can't know in advance how well the game incorporates its co-op and how good of a job it does at supporting this kind of playstyle, even though it's supposed to be able to support this kind of playstyle. I won't know how it turns out till it's over. But anyway, this is my big long explanation. For those of you that want the explanation, now you know. For everyone that didn't watch this video, well, at least I have a video to point people at when they ask these questions over and over again. And that's that. So yeah, join me on this experiment, or don't, but that's the form this particular playthrough is going to take. And if you don't like that, then there's always the mountain of other content, obviously. Thanks for watching like always, guys, and I'll see you next time.